Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Nistavid's One Piece trading card game podcast. For today's episode, I'm going to go a bit into kind of what I'm wanting to do and a bit of what the expectation is here on out. Something new that I've been wanting to try, and I'm going to be doing this just by myself for now. So first off, I'll give you a bit of an introduction of what to expect. And first things first, here's a bit of the series idea. So I want to talk about my opinions on the game and kind of where I see the meta going, as well as off meta, because it's not just about how I feel the meta game is, because I feel like this game has a lot more substance to it rather than its meta, because there's a lot more fun cards to it, and even some of the cards that are considered bad do have counters on them, which makes them still a playable card in some sense or another. So I'd like to go into more detail about this game and give you my opinion and have some fun with this idea. I will be going off a somewhat semi-scripted to keep myself sort of in line. I'm going to be speaking from the heart, but it's more so to keep myself in check, so that way I'm not just babbling. It's more just point notes, just so that way I have my ideas in check, but this is all stuff that I'm going to be talking about from the heart. So that way these are all just pure ideas and not just me reading from a script the entire time. So if this is something that you enjoy or something that you like, please leave a comment down below on any ideas that you might want to hear about. There will be a questions and answers section in each episode I think I would like to do, which I would like to get to as many questions and answers as possible. If I don't get to yours, just comment on the next video and I'll do my best to answer as many people's questions as possible. So, to start things off, I want to hit my first topic, which is going to be that any deck can be valid. So, to put this into perspective, let's look at Leader Zoro first. He gives, when you attach the one Dawn, he gives any character plus 1,000. A lot of decks right now are running any character that doesn't have an ability. So for example, we'll look at the 3-cost Nico Robin with no ability, which she has 5,000 power. Realistically, we could almost turn Zoro into almost a pseudo Uta deck where he can basically be running a lot of cards that are just plain no abilities if we really wanted to. That could be almost a budget deck if you can't afford to buy the super rare Zoro with the rush, or even, for example, you don't want to run rush Sanji or rush Luffy, even if you didn't pick up any of the structure decks for that matter. But it could be a budget version if you picked up a couple booster boxes and you got yourself a Leader Zoro, but didn't get yourself any super rare Rush Zoro cards, in my opinion at least. So the other thing to consider with that too is, depending on what turn you're going, so say you're going first turn, you're going to want to drop those 1-drop 3,000s first. But if you're going second, you're probably going to want to save those and play a 2-drop 4,000 instead to get those heavy hitters out. So it depends on what turn order you're going in, determines when you're going to be playing certain heavy hitters. You're not just going to want to save, say for example, if you're going first, you're not going to want to save till your third turn to play a 4-cost 6,000, for example, when you can go on your second turn to play a 3-cost 5,000. Especially with Zoro, when you could be attaching the one Dawn and attacking for that 6,000 with your 3-cost, if that makes sense. But if you're going second, you could drop that 4-cost 6,000 on your second turn when you have that 4 Dawn, and by the time you're on your third turn, you'll be attacking with a 4-cost for 7,000 with your leader, with your leader's ability. So just some food for thought on how to run a budget Zoro deck, for example. Another thing, for example, is characters like Arlong, Caesar, or Smiley. They all have counters on them. So if you want to splash those into your deck, they are all blue cards, but whereas they don't have the strongest abilities, they do have fun abilities, like Arlong being able to take a card from your opponent's life and put it on the bottom of their deck if you get an event card, or Caesar and Smiley working in tandem to be able to Caesar pull Smiley out onto the field, and Smiley being able to, depending on how many cards you have in your hand, gets bonus power. they also have that counter on them, which makes them viable to be in your hand. So they don't just eat up extra hand space and deck space and not be able to do something. So say if you're being attacked for 5,000 against your leader, you can still counter with those cards and they're still useful even if you don't play them. So you could build a deck theoretically around them and they would still be useful, whether or not you're actually using them for attacking. That doesn't mean it's going to be a good deck necessarily. It just means that it's going to be a card that's not sitting there neutrally idle. Like, for example, with that logic, we could say that cards that don't have counters are bad, but we know that's not true. It just means that these cards, when we put them into these decks, it makes it so that they are viable. It doesn't mean that they are good. So it's just something to think about if you're considering running those cards. I would say Arlong is the most viable out of those three, just because he has the most versatility, where his ability, if you're playing against a blue crocodile deck, you'd definitely be able to get that ability off. But if you're playing against, say, for example, a Rush Zoro deck, you're going to want to use his counter more than anything. And especially since this game is a best of one meta and there's no sideboarding, I would say any blue deck you're going to want to splash one Arlong or one or two Arlongs into any blue deck that you're running. So that way, if you do run against a blue crocodile deck, you have them in your deck ready and available. So that way you can get them out onto the field and get that one life off without any hesitation and without any counters available, because there's no counterplay to that at all. Now, there's no guarantee your opponent's going to have any event cards in their hand, but it's a strong possibility when you're playing against, for example, a blue Baroque Works deck. Now, let's move on to our next topic, that these decks might not be competitive, but that's the whole idea around this game, and that I've been seeing a lot so far, is I haven't run into very many competitive players yet. I've ran into a lot of competitive spirits where everybody's been playing their heart out and they've been playing as best they can and everybody's having a blast. But this game feels like you can build any deck you want and still have fun. It's not like you're going to build the worst deck unless it's all 8 cost characters and takes you forever to ramp up and struggle. This game is designed to be fun, and I've had nothing but fun for it. If you're not a fan of One Piece, or you're not a fan, for example, of this style of game, that's different. But if you're a fan of this style of game, or you're a fan of One Piece, then this is the game for you. And so far, every player that I've played against, in my opinion at least, has shared some sort of sentiment around that. And even if they don't like their deck, they're ready to go and build another deck, and they're ready to get back out there and start trying again. You don't necessarily have to build the next meta deck. You can just build a deck that you enjoy playing and hop right into the next match. And even if there's a card that's not working, you change out 2 or 3 of them and it's ready to go again. So that's the thing I love about this game, is that you don't necessarily have to worry about just the meta. You can prepare to just have fun. And if your opponents are doing that as well, it makes things a lot easier. You don't have to worry about that pressure. So let's move on to the next topic, seeing as we're talking about competitive, which is promos. And this kind of happened with the December tournament schedule with local play. And everybody who was trying to get their hands on promos in a full play set. So for those of you who didn't get a chance to go to locals or didn't get their hands on a promo pack, the promos, especially the ones that were being distributed as individual promos, you would get 1 promo card per promo pack, and it was randomized. And there was 5 types of promos per pack. So it wasn't like you got a promo pack and you knew what you were getting, and all you had to do was get 4 of those packs to get a play set. you most likely would have to buy the cards individually, and right now the prices are exuberant on the secondary market in order to be able to grab those. Sorry, just having tea at the same time. Still fighting off a cold. I don't know when I'm going to kick this thing. But yeah, so the prices were exuberant. And if you wanted to get the winner card, they were already double that price because of, depending on which card it was, especially the Yamato card. So here's where I kind of want to get into my next point, which is promos. You should not be building your decks around promo cards. Deck building should be strictly built around currently OP01 and the structure decks. And even the first set of promos that came with 5 cards in the promo packs. Those are the only promos we should be considering. Any other promos past that should not be considered at this point in time, just because it's too hard to get your hands on a playset. And not that it's a big deal, and if you want to include them, I'm not here to say you're doing something wrong, because by all means this game's about having fun and building your deck the way you want it to. I'm not here to criticize anybody, but to make this game more fair, I would say we should not be looking at building decks around those promos, because it's too hard to get your hands on and too expensive right now. We should wait until the market comes down, or there's an easier way to get hands on these promos. Now I think they should be released more frequently before another set of promos comes out, and I think that would be fair. And I am a big fan of it being randomized. I have no issue with that. But I think it's just that the demand is so high right now that that's what the problem is. It's not that they're hard to obtain. It's just that there's so many people playing this game and so many people love this game right now that they've all been scooped up, and it's going to be impossible to find more promos until they're printed more. And the demand is just so high for this game that Bandai's waiting to see what the demand is fully going to be like before they decide, yep, this is how the demand is going to be. We're going to fully print this game this way. And whether or not that's going to be with set 2, set 3, set 4, the reprint, what that's going to be, I'm not sure, but I think it's a smart business decision on their end. But that's why I think deck building, everybody shouldn't panic. I think they should just deck build around not using these current list of promos and only use everything from OP01 and prior, just so that way we're not panicking. If you are using the promos, good for you. That's not a big deal. It's just for those players who haven't gotten their hands on them yet, I think you should not worry about them. It goes into my next point that trying to collect these promos is brutal right now, especially with the secondary market and how high they are in prices, and especially that there is 5 of them. I know my play group here in town, we did some trading with the promos that we did get, and the randomization was what made it hard. It was fun opening up to find out, oh, we got this card, we got this card, we got this card, and one of my players was happy that she won we did 2 events, and because we managed to get 2 of the events in town, and she was happy she won the Yamato winner card, and I myself won the Kaido winner card. So we got lucky in the sense that we got cards that we wanted for the winner cards, but in the same token, if we didn't, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. But the other thing we were talking about afterwards was, why weren't the cards hollow, or why weren't they, the winner part, shiny, for example? I feel like, though, especially with how randomized the promos were, they could have put a little bit more effort in. But in the same token, how much I love this game, I'm not going to bastardize it too much. I'm happy with what they're doing. I'm very happy we're getting promos and tournament stuff this early on. So in one sense, yeah, I'm a little bit frustrated, and I know the frustration has to be out there in order for same things not to happen in the future and to set status quo. But in the same token, I love this game so much, and I love One Piece as an intellectual property, that I want them to keep producing product and keep producing tournaments for locals, so that way I get to keep enjoying this game at a local level. The next topic I want to go into, and my last topic of the day, since this is going to be in episode 0, is tournament play. And this is kind of what I want to get everyone else's opinion on as well, is what everybody prefers, whether or not it's tournament play, webcam versus in-person play, and more specifically for the winter tournament coming up in February. So, for example, I live in Canada, and we only have the one tournament here in Canada, which is in Niagara. So it's not that it's impossible to get there for other players, but say, for example, some players are only able to get some players aren't able to get to the US to go to a tournament, or they're only able to make it to Niagara, for example. We only have the one tournament available here for us, and I'm sure there's a reason for that, and I'm going to get to that point in a second. But it makes it hard to travel to one centralized location and only have it limited to 512 players. So what I'd like to see, and I know it's privy information, and is where the statistics come in, or how many people do go to the US for tournaments. I've never been to like a major Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, for example, or a Magic the Gathering tournament. This is the first card game I've been invested in. Now, I myself am considering traveling to the States for a tournament, because that would be potentially a little bit more convenient for where to go. But it's considering for other individuals who might not be able to travel to the US, for like other Canadian residents, for example, or even for other US residents who can't travel to another tournament that's within their area. So the point I'm trying to get at is, would you prefer to see another webcam tournament where you purchase the ticket and you play during webcam, or are you liking this going back to locals where you have to travel and do this? I myself am open to both. I know I play in webcam tournaments pretty much weekly through the Discord servers. I really am excited to hopefully be able to get an opportunity to go to the February tournament. I potentially, most likely, am not able to go to this one specifically, but future tournaments I am wanting to myself. I would like to see a little bit more in Canada, potentially one more tournament towards the western coast, to make it a little bit more viable for other Canadian residents. And I mean, I can't speak on behalf of whether or not what statistics or why that may be. This is the only location. But for those who don't know, like, I'm not sure why it's in Niagara versus, say, Toronto or Ottawa, or like a bigger city. But like, I'm sure there is a reason for that. And like I said, I'm not doubting the decision. I'm not questioning it. It's just it seems a little bit different to me, and that's a little bit why I'm not 100% sure why it's there. But either way, would be definitely really excited to go to the tournament, and 100% in support of the store that is running it, for sure. But I would like to, given the opportunity, get a chance to go. And I think for tournament play, this is good now that everything's getting back to a more normalized state, being able to get back into stores and being able to go play at your locals, and being able to go to a big organized tournament where it is, in fact, in a local centralized place where you get to interact with more people. Because this way here, you have the less likelihood of a technical situation. Which leads me kind of to my next point, is if we have another, during these tournaments, big outage like happened with the deck limited battles, I hope there's already stuff in place to handle. Actually, I believe they have the Best Coast Pairings app pre-set up. I'm not sure whether or not that's what they're using for this tournament, because I think it's a best of 3 already. I'd have to double check that. Just because I wasn't really considering going. I was considering, but depending on price-wise, I may or may not be going to one of these tournaments in February. But yeah, for tournament play, long story short, I'm in support of where they are. I'd like to see a little more in Canada if there is the demographic for it. But I'm really happy there is a lot more tournaments available. And I think the 512 player cap is good and bad. Reason for that is it's good because it's going to be able to not overwhelm the staff that's there and be able to gauge interest. Because if it sells out instantly, you're going to know that this is very popular. And then for the next set of tournaments, you're going to be able to increase that cap and know kind of where your cutoff is. So say, for example, they were to increase it double next time for all these events, and they still max out, then they know the demand is really high for this type of game and this type of event. But right now, they're just trying to make sure that they don't bite off more than they can chew, in my opinion, and make sure that they are able to support this game as best as possible. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, because you want to make sure that this game community is healthy, and we want to make sure that this game is in a great state. I think that would be a great thing for these tournaments especially. But for now, anybody who's not able to go, I think you should definitely hop on the Discord and join any of these webcam tournaments, especially if you aren't able to go to locals, because these webcam tournaments are great. Some of them are paid. I believe some of them are free, or even just hopping in to have some webcam battles for the booster set 1, because there's a lot of people out there who are wanting to play, and it's honestly a great experience. I myself personally, I use my phone to play on webcam, and it's a great experience, and you get to meet a whole bunch of great people, and this game has brought so many people together, and it's such a good community that I can't speak more. I can speak more highly of it. It's such a great game. So, but I think that's a good wrap up for episode 1. I know I kind of blabbered on there for a little bit about the tournaments, but I think I got my point across that I think it's a good idea that they're coming back. I'd like to see a little bit more in Canada if possible, and that there is a good cutoff, but I think they're going to pursue that more potentially. But I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think of the podcast? What's your opinions on what I talked about today? And for the next episode, I want to hear your questions and answers. What do you think we're going to go with the topic of what do you think is the best card in the set, in your opinion, and what is the worst card in the set currently? And yeah, if you have any other questions, please leave them down below. If you like the content, like and subscribe. And if you have anything else you'd like to talk about, please, I'd like to hear from you. Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and I hope to see you in the future. Take care.